All right, well, we're going to start our actual virtual tours of our trials now. We are now in the Alan D. Owings Sun Garden, and this is probably one of our most popular gardens at the station. This is where we do almost all of our annual bedding plant trials, both cool and warm season, as well as a lot of perennials and even some woodies and shrubs. So a lot of the new hot things on the market are trialed right here. When most people come to the Hammond Research Station and look at our trials, this is the garden they think about. Without further ado, we're going to kind of get into it, and we'll show you some of the plants. The Sun Garden is approximately 3 acres with about 50 individual beds. The old motto is, can they take the heat? This is full sun, hot nights, blazing heat, and so the plants, if they could take it here, they could take it almost anywhere. This is about as hot as we can throw at them, as harsh as we can throw at them. Notice all of our beds are raised beds because we get quite a bit of rainfall here. We'll show you some really low wet spots too that we've designed this garden around. The raised beds are all uniform, made of a landscape bedding mix, and everything is mulched with pine straw in the most sustainable way possible. So one of our favorite plants in the garden is FLAMETHROWER Coleus, and you can see our collection of FLAMETHROWER Coleus right here. FLAMETHROWER Coleus has actually been named one of the 2020 Louisiana super plants, so we're really excited about it. It's one of the newest super plants on the list. FLAMETHROWER Coleus follows these new Coleus breeding patterns that we're seeing across the country. These trends of really compact, really serrated, ruffled leaves, give you great texture, give you a really maintainable plant. Full sun Coleus, just like all of our sun Coleus, take the heat, take the wet really well. There's 9 different varieties, and 2 new ones this year I'd like to highlight is Cajun Spice and Sriracha. These are the 2 new ones. You can see how the breeding is becoming even more compact on these. Now, unlike most plants, Coleus is sought after for not flowering. When it does flower, usually they're very attractive to pollinators, but Coleus is usually sought after for its bright, intense, colorful foliage, which can somewhat go downhill once the plant starts to flower. Notice that only one of the varieties, and that's this habanero, is flowering right now, and this is one of the older varieties in the breeding line. So we could see that they are breeding out the flowering, so you get this long-lasting burst of color throughout the season.
All right, so something we wanted to feature in this bed are the SOIREE KAWAII series of CATHARANTHUS, or VINCA. So this is a much smaller and a more dwarf form of the very typical common landscape VINCA that we see. There's a new color on the market this year, but we've also planted out some of the existing colors, and look how well they're doing. I mean, they're bushy, they're full, they could almost be used like a ground cover. We've got a couple of pinks and white. In addition, they're great for containers. So especially one that stays this short can also do really well in containers. So the great thing about these particular series of CATHARANTHUS are the color choices that you have. I mean, we've got some really bright red shades to the purples, and one of our favorite, which is peppermint over there, white with red center. Another great plant that we've had this year is SCAEVOLA. This is a SURDIVA series, and these are usually considered container plants, but we're finding them holding up really, really well in the heat and humidity of Louisiana's rainy summer. This particular selection comes in white, pink, and a nice purpley blue over there. You'll see our lovely fencing right here that we have out here in the Sun Garden. This is actually to keep the deer browse at bay. You can actually see where the deer are trimming the sweet potato vine outside the fencing, but inside everything's okay. So in this bed we feature a couple of new ornamental sweet potatoes from Proven Winners. And this particular one is one of my favorite. It's called MEDUSA, and it's got a really strappy leaf, almost like a lot of little skinny fingers. Seems to be holding up really well in the full sun. And then also standing tall is SUNCREDIBLE sunflower. This is one of the newer breeding lines in sunflowers that focuses on multi-branching, ever-blooming. It's called indeterminate because it just keeps on blooming. And you can look at the pollinator activity around it, and it's just really a magnet for bees and butterflies. So right now we're looking at Rebel Child Salvia. It's a Salvia farinaceae discovered by Greg Grant in Texas. And look at the bee activity on this, even early in the morning. It's got this great blue color, comes back as a perennial forest, has survived freezes and floods, and just constantly produces spikes of these beautiful blue flowers all summer long.
Another SCAEVOLA that's coming out this year that we really like is STARLIGHT by Proven Winners. Just like the other SCAEVOLA, these are usually used in containers, but they actually look like they're going to be a really great bedding plant or ground cover here in Louisiana. We really like STARLIGHT because of the great two-tone color you get on the flower with the purple outsides and the white insides with the green centers. Another classic plant we have in the Sun Garden that everyone seems to like is Blew My Mind Dwarf Morning Glory. Blue is a highly sought after color in the horticulture business and in the landscape. And when you can get something this deep and rich blue, it usually turns heads.
So we are now in our edible bed, and edibles is something that I really wanted to take on kind of personally here at the station in the trial gardens because it's something that I enjoy. Also, it's a pretty popular trend that's kind of sweeping the nation. We actually have a couple of trial companies that have sent us some edibles to trial in our landscape. One is the Asian DELITE eggplant, which is here, who has a semi-spineless, easy to harvest, purple skin, white fleshy fruit that is very tender to the taste. Looks great in the landscape, if you ask me. This one is a basil, which we have a small collection of. This is the blue African basil, and we have had it in our trials for a couple years here. Highly fragrant, very attractive to pollinators, and also makes a very tasty pesto. Here we have Gaillardia in two colors. We have heated up yellow and heated up scarlet. Also from proven winners. They are both handling our heat and wet summers very well. Very attractive to pollinators and looking great in the landscape.
One of my favorite new plants in the garden this year is Heart of the Jungle COLOCASIA by proven winners. It's a really vigorous, fast-growing, large-leaf colocasia. And as you see, when it gets a little bit of wind, it actually has this wind movement that brings a lot of texture to the garden. Lantana is always a favorite in Louisiana landscapes. It does fantastic and when we get to our dry, hot summers, but also takes the wet a little bit. These have started flowering out recently, and these are new releases by proven winners. These are the Luscious series. Right now you're looking at Royal Cosmo, which is this purple-orange color. And this is Royal Red Zone. It's a really deep red-orange. These are bicolor lantana. What we really like about them is not only they're flowering really well, there's a great color, but they're staying very compact. Again, you'll notice a lot of the breeding in ornamental plants, especially in bedding plants, are going to small, compact, uniform plants. Easy to maintain, fits well in any landscape of any size.
All right, so continuing this trend of nice, beautiful, compact sun coleus. This year from proven winners, we have two entries for the COLORBLAZE series. We have ROYALE Pineapple Brandy, which is this beautiful chartreuse and yellow color. And to the left, we have ROYALE Cherry Brandy, which is a really nice dark red that's holding up so well in our intense sunlight of the Louisiana summer. Again, you see the serrated edges, and the uniformity across all these plants is really superb.
Another collection we have here that we're really impressed with are our CANNAS. We have quite a few different varieties here, but I just wanted to point out the wide array of colors that you can bring. These CANNAS can do really well in really wet spots also, which is something that we are always looking for in Louisiana. We tend to see that the shorter, more compact canna lilies do much better for us in our climate than the really long, leggy ones.
Another salvia we're really excited about that we received from Ball Horticultural this year is the white flame salvia. A lot of times we don't see a lot of vigor from white blooming salvias in the landscape, but this is a Salvia farinaceae cross, and it is doing really well. It's staying compact, bushy, branching really well, and as you can see, the white flowers are still holding up and the bee activity is just fantastic on it. And behind that, you'll see the VALIANT VINCA series from PANAMERICAN seed, also holding up really well through all the wet weather we've had and just enjoying and loving this heat, believe it or not. Another plant that I've been so excited about this year that's holding up again really well through this summer we're having is this Lobelia series, which is the Starship series from Ball Horticultural, Kef seed, I believe. And so this particular one is Starship Burgundy. We've also got purple and deep rose among a few other colors in the series.
Here is another example of a coleus that we have from Ball FLORAPLANT called Dragon Heart. It's also sticking with the trend of being compact. It's pretty showy in the garden with its lime green serrated leaves and bright pink venation.
All right, so zinnias are a popular plant in the summer throughout the southern United States. Oftentimes, though, in wet weather, you'll see them get a lot of leaf spot and they'll just kind of go down and collapse. But these double Zaharas from Ball Horticultural are just absolutely fantastic. They're holding up really well. Great color. I mean, look at this orange pop of color. Really enjoying it, as are the pollinators. So we're here in our pollinator bed in the sun garden, and this is a bed where we really feature a collection of plants that we know are beneficial to pollinators. And so what I'd like to point out first, right here in the front, we have a couple of different selections of porterweed. I mean, look at the red on this porterweed. People say this flower isn't very large, which is true, but they still make a little bit of a show in the landscape. But what they are is they're super attractors for pollinators, and that's why we plant them. This is called dwarf dark blue, which looks kind of dark purple to me, but again, a great plant that doesn't get too large. Milkweeds are also critical to have in your habitat for monarch butterfly caterpillars, and this is a giant tropical milkweed. This is a lavender color. We also have a large white. And if you look around the bed, we also have a couple of other things that I'd like to point out. This is Joe Pye weed. This is a native, but this is a dwarf version. And this one doesn't take over your garden like a Joe Pye weed out in the wild would. But this is just coming into bloom and it's going to attract so many pollinators, it'll make your head spin. Look at the size of this milkweed. I mean, it's taller than I am, and I'm only about 5'9", but still, this is making a great impression in the landscape. Look at the seed pods on this. Balloon plant is one of the common names this milkweed goes by. Also goes by another name, which I'm not going to mention right now, but those of you who know will probably laugh about it. But again, an excellent larval food source for the monarch butterfly caterpillars. So another great plant we have here in the pollinator bed is white turnera. This is a tropical plant that's sometimes root hardy for us in southern Louisiana, but it grows really fast and is wonderful as an annual. Early in the morning when the sun really starts coming up, you see these beautiful white blooms open up, and again, magnets for pollinators. In fact, you'll even see where some of the pollinators and bees are so impatient, they go ahead and just cut into the flower before they open. This particular plant is also part of the Plants with Potential program we have here at the Hammond Research Station, and that program is really all about featuring little known and underutilized plant material in Louisiana that's not patented, but is doing great in our trials and should be used more widely in the landscape industry. Gomphrena is another great choice for hot, sunny weather as a bedding plant. This particular one from Proven Winners is Truffula Pink. And for those of you who know the story of the Lorax, it does look like the truffula trees. But great pollinator attractor, stays nice, tight, and bushy, and well-branched. So some of our beds here in the sun garden are actually dedicated to perennial trialing, and perennials oftentimes in Louisiana don't last that long simply because of the amount of rainfall we get and a lot of times the high heat and humidity. But this bed features a couple of great ones. This first one I wanted to look at is Rudbeckia, and it was actually discovered locally by a nursery. It's called Early Bird Gold. It's been blooming now for a couple of months, and you can see that it just spreads very slowly, makes a nice clumping form, very uniform, and a great pollinator attractor. So another perennial that's great to attract pollinators, this was new for us this year from Darwin Perennials. This is the Whisper series of catmint, which is a distinct and different plant from catnip. This particular color is blue, and it's been blooming for quite a while, and again, we're really happy in how well it's holding up in the high amount of rainfall we've received so far this summer. So another popular perennial for Louisiana landscapes and home gardeners are daylilies. But in the last decade or so, we've had a real problem with daylily rust, which affects most of the leaves of the plants and really takes them down. But in this particular bed, we have a great collection from West Farms Nursery. West Farms does some excellent daylily breeding for rust resistance, numerous colors. They have some selections that bloom very early in the year, some that bloom a little bit later, so you really extend that season of daylily bloom, and then the foliage stays nice and green and upright for the growing season.
So VINCA has traditionally been a fantastic bedding plant in the South, although in the past few years they've come on some hard times because they have a really big problem with our really wet weather developing a fungal leaf spot. This is the new Cora XDR series from Syngenta, and I believe XDR stands for extra disease resistant. And whether or not that's true, they actually are. You can see there's no sign of leaf spot, no fungal problems whatsoever, very vigorous growth, and just a fantastic assortment of colors. You can see how they fill in really well, and they really provide a lot of color pop in the landscape.
Another great plant that's just not utilized enough here in Louisiana as a landscape plant would be the cestrums. And this particular one is called Orange Peel, and you can see that it's a nice tight cluster of golden yellow trumpet-shaped flowers that attract hummingbirds. But these are tropicals, but they're very root hardy for us. So some, even in a mild winter, we won't even lose some of the leaves, but in a harsh winter, they will die down to the ground, but quickly start growing again or blooming usually by March or early April. One of our favorite beds here in the sun garden, we actually have multiple beds dedicated to salvias, but this is the largest. Salvias are an extremely popular plant in Louisiana because of the wide-ranging bloom color and because they're such big pollinator attractors. And with salvias, you have a number of different species and a number of different crosses that have been made, but ones that I'm so impressed with the last couple of years are the Salvia garniticas. They're larger salvias. They do tend to stay in a clump, but they've been excellent for us as a perennial. These have come back multiple years for us. You see a lot of colors from purple all the way down to blues, and we also have Salvia farinaceae in here, which has always been a great salvia for Louisiana gardens because it stands up so well to our heat, humidity, and rainfall. So two other salvias we really wanted to bring attention to because they have such persistence in the landscape and have just been so durable. In the foreground, you're going to see rockin' blue suede shoes, and in the background, you're going to see purple in bloom. Two wonderful salvias. You can see the pollinator activity on them. Great color combination, really nice and bushy and sturdy. We've really enjoyed them. So one of the best pollinator plants we have around here in the garden are commonly known as Joe Pye weed. One problem with them, though, is if you take a wild Joe Pye weed and bring it into the garden, it's quite rangy and leggy, but it does attract a lot of pollinators. But there's been some great breeding that's been going on with some dwarf Joe Pye weed. This particular one is from Darwin Perennials, and it's called Euphoria Ruby, and it stays nice, compact, branches really well, and just forms a nice low cluster in the landscape that attracts lots of pollinators. All right, so what about this elusive lavender plant? Everybody wants a lavender plant that lasts a long time in Louisiana, but with our rainfall and high humidity, it's always a challenge. But so far this year, we've been really happy with this particular lavender from Darwin Perennials. It's a Spanish lavender, and it's called Primavera. It's blooming, it's super fragrant. I wish you could smell that through the lens, but so far, it's handled all the rain and humidity we could throw at it this summer. We're pretty happy with it. Verbenas are such a popular landscape plant in Louisiana, but oftentimes they do tend to cycle out in the hot, wet summers. We've been really impressed, though, this year with this Endurascape Red Improved from Ball FLORAPLANT. Staying in flower, looking really, really good, and the foliage is staying nice and green.
So moving on into the woody plants, and I mentioned before the sun gardens where we primarily trial all of our bedding plants, although we do have some long-term displays that you saw earlier and some woodies mixed in. One woody in particular I really want to highlight is this Peach Perfection Abelia by Star Roses and Plants. And this is one of our favorite plants in the garden by far. Abelias in general are very underutilized in Louisiana landscapes. They're fantastic bushy, they have really good color, great flowers. You can see fantastic pollinator activity, bees, butterflies, just about anything you can see, any kind of pollinator out there is going to love this plant. And abelias in general. This one in particular we really like because it's so heavy, dense flowering. It's quick growing, so you could see how big it's gotten in just about a year and a half in the ground. And what we really like about this is it changes color. It's got this really neat, it's called Peach Perfection, as I said. The new foliage comes out with this peach copper color, and then later in the fall we actually get a little bit of burgundy into the leaves, so you really get some fall neat color change throughout the season on this plant. Another woody that's becoming really popular in our landscape is Distilium. Now, about 10 years ago, most of you would have never heard of Distilium, but it's been really pushed and really a lot of breeding has gone into creating these fantastic plants. They're really good for just about any weather condition. They can take the heat, they can take the cold, they can take the wet, they can take the dry, and they perform fantastic. It has inconspicuous flowers in the spring, but what is really there is a nice foliage green color. Now, Distilium comes in all shapes, forms, and sizes, but one that we really like in our trials right now is Cinnamon Girl from First Edition Plants. It's more of a compact Distilium, smaller leaves, and then when you get the new foliage, it actually comes out with a really nice red copper cinnamon color. So here is Gem Box. It's an inkberry holly or an Ilex glabra. An Ilex glabra is actually a native holly that's very underutilized in the landscape. Gembox is a cultivar put out by proven winners, and we're really liking it in the garden. It stays very compact. We think it has a lot of use for potential boxwood replacement. Great, clean growing, very nice flowering actually in the spring, which you'd be surprised. And Ilex glabras are fantastic in really wet places, which we have quite a few of in Louisiana. So if you have that wet area, you need a little hedge or a short hedge, this is a perfect choice. Sticking with the box series, this is Strong Box, also from Proven Winners, another Ilex glabra, inkberry holly. You can see this one is very similar shaped, but actually a little bit larger leaves. You see like that lime green new foliage color that really resembles a lot of boxwood. There's a good opportunity for some of these Ilex glabra breeding to become our boxwood replacement in the south. So this is Skybox, also from Proven Winners, and this is actually an Ilex crenata, or a Japanese holly. This is going to have more of a vestigiate form, columnar, great option for a hedge to replace boxwood. Everyone loves a good butterfly bush, or buddleia. Some of the hottest new buddleia on the market are these Pugster buddleias, and this is Pugster amethyst from Proven Winners. Very compact, tons of flower power, great colors. It comes in blue and white. White does not do the best for us in our climates, but blue and amethyst are fantastic. We really love Pugster buddleia here.
Look at the silver bluish green color of the foliage of this beautiful pineapple guava. This is Bambina. This is a dwarf selection introduced by Southern Living Plant Collection, and true to its name, it's staying very compact, very bushy, making a cute little round meatball shaped bush. Has great blooms in the spring and has proven to be quite winter hardy for us so far here at the Hammond Research Station. So one of our popular landscape plant choices in Louisiana are vitex trees, and some people call these chase trees, but this is a new introduction from Bailey First Edition Plants, and this is called Flipside. And the reason it's called Flipside is because when the wind blows or you turn the leaves over, you get this beautiful purple color underside the leaves. The great thing about this plant too is it has an improved purplish blue bloom to go along with this beautiful color under the leaves.
Okay, and here we have two arborvitaes from Proven Winners. We have Tater Tot on the right and Anna's Magic Ball on the left. Here they're planted in full sun, but they could also be planted in part sun and perform just well. If you notice, they have such interesting foliage, which really brings a unique texture to the landscape. They're easy to grow with little to no pruning, and they have so far held on to their appealing globular shape.
So another plant we've been so happy with the performance on is this golden Oakland holly from the Southern Living Plant Collection. I mean, look at the variegation on those leaves, and look at the margin on that leaf. It gives so much interest and so much detail to the garden. Plus, these guys have been through a lot of really wet weather, and they're doing just great and growing really quickly, yet maintaining this nice shape, being unpruned.